Hello again, Steve here with a few thoughts that came across my mind today. I was going through this book very briefly. It's called Yes, 50 Scientifically Proven Ways to Persuade. And it's a lot of good information in there, a lot to do with business, right? About how to increase sales, be a better manager, and so on. And I got to asking myself, because there was a lot of talk, there's some talk in there about customers, employees, managers, and so on. And I got to wondering, is there any real difference fundamentally between those characters? Is there really much difference between an employee and a customer, for example? And I got to thinking there really isn't, in terms of motivation, very often. I mean, there's going to be various degrees of motivation and, names for it and whatever. But in terms of the basic concept, I think that everybody really wants to profit in some way for their efforts, right? For what that is they're doing. I mean, in the classic example of you and I together, right? I have $1, you have a pencil. You want my $1, I want your pencil. I want your pencil more than I want my $1, you want my $1 more than you want the pencil. So we exchange. That is a free market, right? Purely free market. There's no coercion, there's no anything. There's no valence of any sort of disguise or deception or anything like that. It's just straight. It's perfect. So that's a win-win. We both profited. We both got more than we've given in our mind, right? For our function or whatever reason it is. And in an ideal situation, customer and employee, and for that matter, proprietor, are no different, right? They're just people exchanging things. A customer comes to a vendor with the hope of gaining, if they are a customer. They have a certain amount of cash or card, whatever it is, exchange of value, and they want something, and they're willing to exchange what they have for the goods. And the vendor, on the other hand, other side of the table, wants the equity or the exchange of value more than the goods. So they exchange, and they both profited from that exchange. Now, an employee, what does the employee do? The employee goes to the vendor of employment, the employer, right? And exchanges efforts, ideas, labor, perhaps tools and experience, all of that, for something in return. There's an exchange of value. And as long as the agreements are held in place, there is a profit on both sides. The employer can get stuff done because he or she has the agreement of the employee to do certain things, and the employee gets compensation which is perceived to be more valuable than the efforts. If they're not, if the compensation is not perceived to be more than the efforts, then eventually the employee goes somewhere else or demands more or something like that. And the same way with the other way around, the employer. If the employer hires somebody and that somebody is not doing anything, sitting around, is absent all the time or whatever, then there's not value out of the deal. And it's the same with a purchaser, a customer of goods. If the goods are not holding up, or they're shoddy service or something like that, they'll go somewhere else, just like the employee will go somewhere else eventually. So I think that the difference is just time lapses and so on. A customer might just get something today and not tomorrow or whatever, whereas the employee might do it over a period of time. But the concept is the same. The concept is people exchanging goods and services and equity for it and whatever, exchanging a value with the hope of profiting. With the hope of profiting. And we can take even the monetary side out of it. Two people can get together to raise a family to help each other out and profit in the experience. The profit is the creation of that wonderful relationship where it works out, the building up of a family and all that. It can be just friendships. People get together because they find it's better to have a friend than to be lonely. And if it works for both of them, then there's an exchange of that, an exchange of ideas and conversations, and over tea and coffee and over a beer and what have you, and camping trips or whatever. And there's a profit that takes place there. It's not a monetary profit, but profit doesn't have to be that. There can be educational experiences that people will sign up for. All kinds of things. I don't think there's any real difference fundamentally, no matter what we call the characters involved. When people are exchanging and negotiating freely, without extortion and fraud and manipulation and government statutes and so on, it is a free market, and it's just men and women exchanging ideas, goods, services, relationships, friendships, conversations, cups of coffee, meals, all of these things. It's exchange for, in some way, a profit. Sometimes it doesn't feel like that, of course, because sometimes we sully that word profit. But what it means is we get more out of the deal. If we're really honest with ourselves, everything that we do, well, when we set out to do it, the expectation is that we're going to somehow gain. We're going to have a good time, we're going to enjoy ourselves, or even just be slightly a bit better. Sometimes it looks like maybe it's a bunch of hassle. Sometimes it feels like we don't want to do it, but we do it anyway because we might feel ostracized if we don't. So it's kind of like a negative motivation. We don't really like to do it, but the not doing it is going to make it even worse. So there's still that profit aspect of it built in. I don't know, it's just a thought, because sometimes we come up with all these, personas that we label these things with, right? But in the end, it's all just men and women exchanging ideas and exchanging stuff, human beings, I think. Helps us maybe to get a little bit of clarity, for me it does anyway, on what's actually going on. So, I don't know what you think about that. What's the value of it? But it gives me a little bit of clarity, and that any form of clarity helps me with my quality of life. Anyways, great chatting. Hope to do this again.